teenager, it never happened. But it's pretty interesting. I know Ishmael, we keep going back to his presentation, but he had a question in there about how 21st century sees himself, and I thought the answer to that question was literature, because all English people like that. So the field of Shakespearean scholarship has been around for centuries and has branched off into many subfields. Shakespearean film is one of the more recent additions to this larger field of Shakespearean cultural studies. And while the field has come with age, I propose a new subcategory to research within the field of Shakespearean film, a subcategory focusing on the scholarship between film and re-adaptations. Studies have been done on Shakespeare's plays and their respective movie adaptations, whether these adaptations were for educational purposes or for the masses. Shakespeare's plays have also been studied in terms of their main themes appearing in popular media. You can see all the examples. There has yet to be any research in the field where Shakespearean adaptations take influence from both his plays and popular media. My paper attempts to fill this gap and postulate at the significance of this new subfield with an analysis of the end scenes of both the film Hook, directed by Steven Spielberg, and the adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream, directed by Michael Hoffman. Hook shares similar qualities with the play, containing magic, fairies, and dream reality paradox. I will be focusing on how Hoffman uses Hook's end scene in his A Midsummer Night's Dream in order to make these similarities more pronounced. I use this analysis to change the tendency of Shakespearean adaptation studies from their focus on educational adaptations to a more cultural study of Shakespeare's place within the masses. It wasn't until the 1990s that a director even thought about bringing the words of Shakespeare out of a classroom and into popular media. There was a big boom in Shakespeare scholarship revivals, but since then, studying film adaptations has become repetitive. This paper uses this boom in popular Shakespearean adaptations to initiate a revival of Shakespearean scholarship in the 2000s. Along with the description of my new field of study, I will also add that the reason why Shakespearean adaptations can adapt from both the traditional plays and popular media is because Shakespeare's words are intertextual. The significance of this intertextuality can be seen in the trend Hollywood has created in appropriating literature and film in order to create something new, possibly the 21st century's way of finding its own identity. So Hoffman combines the past with the present in an attempt to show how Shakespeare's classic and a popular movie from the 90s can create a form of social identity. This social identity is being constructed for a society that seems to not have an identity of their own, except to adapt everything from literature. The movie Hook, directed by Steven Spielberg, can be seen as a sequel to the classical tale of Peter Pan, if Peter had grown up. Peter Pan is portrayed as a workaholic lawyer and is married to Wendy's granddaughter. Captain Hook kidnaps his children, forcing Peter to return to Neverland, and with Tinkerbell, or Tink. With the help of her and the Lost Boys, he strives to remember how to be Peter Pan again in order to save his children by battling with Hook once again. He ends up defeating Hook and returning to home in reality. And so I'm just going to show the brief clip of the end scene that I'm going to be analyzing.
Trouble with the music? By the time you go. So that place between sleep and wake, that place where he's telling people dreaming, that's what I'll always love you.
So now going into Midsummer Night's Dream. Michael Hopkins' version of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream stays true to the language and plot of the original play while adding additional modern influences, mainly a scene in a comical bicycle chase scene. The lovers' quarrel starts with both Lysander and Demetrius wanting Hermia, but she only has eyes for Lysander. Helena is in love with Demetrius, but is ignored until, by chance, all the lovers end up in the woods where the fairies intervene. The fairy king and queen, Oberon and Titania, are fighting over a servant boy. The plot twists up when Oberon sends Puck for a flower that causes people to fall in love with the first thing they see upon waking. Oberon intends to trick the queen as revenge, but also uses the flower on the lovers. Puck mixes the lovers up, and chaos ensues, but all rights itself in the end. And here's the end scene. It's Puck's famous monologues. So now I'm going to focus on the characters and kind of go step by step as to what I actually analyze in the end scenes. So starting with Smee, he is the first mate to Captain Hook and is portrayed as an interpreter between Hook and his shipmates, a servant for all of Hook's needs, and a confidant who listens to all of Hook's doubts and schemes. It is Smee who makes sure all of Hook's plans unfold, just like Hook is to Oberon. Hook is King Oberon's master trickster who, throughout the movie, is at the beck and call of Oberon. Similar to Smee, Puck listens to Oberon complain about Titania, obtains the magical flower, and distributes its spell at Oberon's bidding. In a way, Puck acts as the play's interpreter to us, the audience, with his monologue at the end. Both Smee and Puck are not only seen as key figures in advancing their respective bosses' plans, but they also explain and advance the story itself all the way until the end. Besides similar characteristic traits of Smee and Puck, their portrayals at the end of their respective films also speak to each other. Both characters are depicted as janitors sweeping near statues that reflect the dream of the protagonist. Smee is near a Peter Pan statue, which is meant to juxtapose the visions of the reality and dream paradox that Peter experiences. Puck is sweeping around the palace where Bottom, whom Hoffman portrays as the true hero, as seen in one of his interviews that I read, and his gang practice their play. The structure near Puck, we will call it a fountain, because I couldn't tell if it was a well or not, can also be a reflection of Titania's lofted bed, where most of Bottom's dreams took place. Both scenes are centered on the protagonist, with secondary characters cleaning up around them. The two characters' attire is also very similar. They are both wearing a similar styled hat and jacket, and both are seen with brooms. Puck reveals his magical identity by taking off his hat and revealing his horns. Smee is portrayed as a simple sweeper, Yet the use of the same actor forces the viewer to look at his new role as still having a mystical quality. Was he really a janitor all along, or was he the first mate of Hook? With this technique, Hoffman juxtaposes both sources that he is adapting from. There are aspects of Hook, but he also brings us back to Shakespeare by showing Puck as the mythical creature that he is. Both movies end with a glowing fairy flying off into the distance with their hero watching wistfully. In Hook, the scene starts by showing Peter waking up at the base of the statue, dressed in the attire he left for Neverland in. He looks up when Smee jokingly asks if he was in trouble with the missus. Tink then appears at the shoulder of the statue where the sun shines into the camera. It is Tink that relates the story to a dream atmosphere when she says to Peter, "Do you know the place between sleep and awake? That's where I'll always love you." With the same man who played Smee portrayed as an everyday janitor, the viewer wonders if it really was a dream after all. Spielberg's twist of an ambiguous dream ending might have come from Shakespeare's play, but it is Hoffman that solidifies this connection by having Puck dressed and acting similar to Smee, and by using the same effects for his fairies. Hoffman strives to portray Bottom as the true hero of the story, and it is evident in the way that he has Bottom as one of the last actors seen. While Puck is sweeping by the fountain, he looks up to a window that is revealed as Bottom's house, and the camera focuses on Bottom's look of longing as he fiddles with the crown, now the size of a ring, that Titania had given him. As he looks out the window, what seems at first to be a group of fireflies fly into view. One comes close enough to him for us to see a faint outline of a fairy, and then it disappears, leaving the viewer and Bottom to wonder if it really had all been a dream, as Puck's monologue further articulates. Sarah Mayo makes the connection between the two portrayals of how to represent a fairy in her essay, yet this is as far as she went in analyzing the similarities between the two works. It is as if scholars are apprehensive to leave the safely sought after elitist borders of the realm of academia because they deem popular media as not deep enough for them to analyze, but Hoffman shows that there is more to his appropriations by his way of illustrating how this century's identity is found through appropriations and adaptations. To conclude, I will now examine how far we have come in Shakespearean cultural studies and end where it is we can go from here. So Douglas Lanier asks an important question. Without new examples of screen Shakespeare to pique critical interest, will Shakespearean cultural studies remain a robust field? The very question underlines the field's symbiotic relationship with the 1990s Shakespeare film boom and points perhaps to weaknesses and thus opportunities in the field. Until Kenneth Branhoff's Henry V adaptation, there were few popular treatments of Shakespeare's works and more academic versions. Ayanna Thompson claims that in interviews, Branhoff expressed the belief that Shakespeare needed to be kept alive and discussed and real. Thompson goes on to say that realism has everything to do with accessibility and democratization, or making everything more relatable, which is a constant theme throughout popular adaptations of Shakespeare. Just as the 1990s had a boom in Shakespeare film studies and adaptations, the culture in this century's mass media has taken a turn for more appropriated films, meaning that directors are more liberal with what they take from other works in order to portray Thompson's realism to their audience. Lanier also provides a complete survey of where Shakespearean cultural criticism has been in the past 15 years. He outlines that Shakespearean cultural studies has focused on the repopularization or an examination of how Shakespeare is portrayed in popular media, mediatization, or the concerted reshaping of Shakespeare's theatrical works to fit the formal and ideological protocols of the new mass media, and globalization, or the engagement of Shakespeare with various non-British cultural forms and contexts. Because of the success of Shakespearean adaptations within mass media, novelists have a new agenda. We need to write a book that can easily be transcribed to the silver screen. Most Academy Award and Emmy Award winning films are adaptations. As you can see from these statistics, 85% of all Academy Award winning Best Pictures are adaptations. 45% of all television movies of the week are adaptations, yet 70% of all Emmy Award winners come from these films, and 83% of all miniseries are adaptations, with 95% of Emmy Award winners are drawn from these films. The 21st century is more media-based, and because our cultural identity lacks a concrete image. So in response, we take bits and pieces from every other time period. Shakespearean film adaptations have become just as involved in this phenomenon of film appropriations. Hoffman's film adaptation does not take his inspiration solely from the original text, nor even from the cultural and artistic text from the period of history during which Shakespeare's play was written, but rather to texts literary, artistically, and musically historically distant from the Renaissance. For example, he has his lovers chasing each other on old bicycles to bring industrialization into the magical forest. If Hoffman's film can be looked at as having cultural influences from the literature, arts, and music of different historical contexts, then why not from other popular media as well? Scholars have examined what classical cultural influences directors had in creating their own twist of the Bard's original play, but no one has yet looked at how other popular films may have influenced such works as well. These directors of Shakespeare film adaptations are in the business of transcending their cultural influences into creating their own interpretations of Shakespeare's original intent. We are in a culture today where originality comes at a price. The 2000s saw a multitude of remakes of older films and adaptations of older books. Hoffman's Dream came out at the peak of this appropriation boom. It is not a great leap to say that not only was Hoffman influenced by the Shakespearean adaptational boom of the early 1990s, but also the early signs of remaking adaptations in popular media from the 2000s. Hoffman uses the best of both worlds. He uses Shakespeare's play and other cultural influences, such as the arts and music, but he also uses techniques recently popularized in his contemporaries, possibly unintentionally, thus proving the way our current mass media views originality today. This view being that the mass media assumes that as long as there is a twist incorporated with the original work, then it is considered original art. Going back to our fairy scene, Mayo suggests that he uses techniques first described by J.M. Barrie, author of Peter Pan, in order to depict a fairy, a technique used in Spielberg's Hook when it came to his version of Tinkerbell. What if, on top of his agenda to, as Mayo describes, transform the Shakespearean narrative into a Hollywood film, Hoffman also wanted the similarities between the two stories to be more evident, which is why he used the end scene of Hook as inspiration for his own in A Midsummer Night's Dream. With this analysis, it shows the intertextuality of Shakespeare's words in that not only can a director use the bard to showcase his own agenda, but also to show how fluid Shakespeare's themes and ideas are in reference to other works. This is Hoffman's way of being true to his own readaptation-driven culture by using, as Shakespeare would probably have done, an ending from a work that's similarly connected to his own or to his main influence. The comparisons are present in both films, yet the criticism is not. The significance of both the similarities between Puck and Smee and the appearances of both fairies illustrate the idea of how intertextuality is not only apparent in the bard's original words, but also in the themes appropriated from his works. It could be said that the link of finding one's identity lies in the practice of readapting and adding one's own touch to history. My goal is to not eliminate the original plays themselves from the equation of literary criticism, but my goal is to effectively add a new direction of Shakespearean cultural studies, because everyone wants to do that with Shakespeare. Not something new. We have focused too long on the ideological shortcomings of popular appropriations. Instead, we should embrace the fact that this is where our culture is today, and within this arena, there are critical approaches that need to be observed. Cinema has become one of this century's main forms of expression. It is here where people search for the identity of the 2000s through appropriations and readaptations. In the scholarly world, we should evolve with the times and start criticizing films that adapt from both literature and other films, in particular the field of Shakespeare studies.
Thank you, Kelsey.